I need you to hear me, understand me, and join me in saying, welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. This is your host, the most charismatic man in entertainment, coming live from New York City from my mother's basement. I'm just kidding. But I am a jackass. I'm a moron. I'm an idiot. Well, and you're probably wondering, well, why is he saying that? Well, no need to fear, because the dummy is here. So, true story, funny story. Um, a little background. So, me and Kyle, Kyle came on a podcast. I recorded with him previous, and it was a great conversation. We chatted for a little bit, probably an hour and a half. And I was really looking forward to this episode. I was looking forward to this conversation. Great guy, great conversation. Got to know a lot about him and what he does, right? So I'm excited. We say goodbye, tell the wife, goodbye and all that good stuff, right? And I go log out, and I'm like, okay, I can't wait. So I go play it back. I go listen to it, to edit, all that good stuff, right? And I'm thinking to myself, why am I so loud? Why am I so loud? So I thought it was my laptop. So I hit the mute button. I've lowered the volume. I changed my headphones. I ran to the bathroom, came back. I went to McDonald's, came back, and thought it was all going to fix it. No, well, I'm still loud. And then I look over, I look at my mic. I'm like, well, it's plugged in. It's plugged into my laptop. Wouldn't you know it? The part that goes into the mic was not plugged in. So yeah, true story, funny story. So yeah, you might wonder why is he so loud? Why is it not so sexy and clear like he normally is? Well, that's the reason. I'm an idiot and I didn't, plug my mic in properly. But nonetheless, it was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to everybody hearing this conversation. Kyle, phenomenal guy. I'm sure he'll be back on the podcast, but I had to get that disclaimer because I know y'all probably gonna wonder: is inflation ruining the podcast? Can he not afford a better microphone? No, it's not that. I'm a dummy, and I didn't check my stuff properly. What they say in boxing: protect yourself at all times. Well, I need to plug everything in at all times. So I know you guys can enjoy this episode. It's going to be great. Thank you, Kyle, again for coming on. But I had to just give a little quick note because I'm disappointed, disgusted. But you know what? This conversation, it was like lightning. You can't catch it in a bottle twice. It's 15 minutes of fame. You can't get that back. So, I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'm glad to be back. Enjoy this episode. And remember, you can always donate $5,000. I need you to hear me, understand me, and join me in saying, welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I am your host. You should know by now, the most charismatic man in entertainment. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I just got back from vacation, had a lot of drinks. Last night I had a lot of drinks, and I'm not talking about water. But it's good to be back, and I'm looking forward to having this next guest on. I was actually on his podcast last week, and we had a great conversation. We talked about things that we're both passionate about, things that's happening in the media, happening in our culture and society. And I think it was time for him to come on, and I'm looking forward to you guys hearing what he has to say, and getting to know him as a person. He's the host and creator of the Vibes broadcast, which is a show slash podcast dedicated to positivity, inspiration, and motivation. He interviews you've probably seen some of the actors that he's interviewed. He interviews comedians, musicians, content creators, everybody alike. And the mission of his podcast, like mine, is to spread positivity and have great conversation. And he may not be Norman Bates, but his name is Kyle Yates. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, first off, thank you for having me on your show, and I very much appreciate it. So,
Absolutely.
what shall we talk of today?
Um, what should we talk about? You know what? I think it's only right for you to introduce yourself a little bit. A little bit about your backstory. Where you came from,
and your journey so far in life?
Well, I was born in a little town called Baytown, and that's just outside of Houston, Texas.
Oh,
Our claim to fame, Gary Busey is from Baytown. And if you've ever seen the movie Hellfighters with John Wayne, that was filmed right next to Baytown, an area called Pelly, but it's all one big city now. And oh, I grew up there, and at the age of 19, got married, had some kids at 22, and got divorced because my wife decided a younger man who was barely older than our daughter was a better fit for her. 10 years later, met the love of my life now, Michelle, and she had family and friends up here in Austin and came up here to visit. And I was like, man, that's where I need to be, because, Houston, it's all chemical plants and all that kind of stuff. Up here in Austin, it's the hills, it's, beautiful land and all the wildlife, and you got clean water up here, the lakes and the rivers. It's so fun to be in. So we moved up here, and I think I told you last time I ended up developing a spinal disease, which causes my bones to deteriorate and caused nerve damage, and my discs are damaged, and a few surgeries later. I mean, I'm moving around okay, but I still, have to use a cane and a wheelchair. But with that, I had to retire, and luckily I had enough time with the city that I could retire and got on disability, all that stuff. But I'm not one just to lay around on the couch and vegetate. I had to be busy, and so I said, man, maybe I can do something in podcasting. Mind you, I'd already been doing a paranormal show, but that was just kind of a fun, whatever. But I met this actor named Adrian Paul, and for those of you who might not know that name, he played Highlander on television back in the 90s and a few movies. And I mean, how do you not ask somebody like that to be, not to be on your show, right? So
yeah.
he came on, and I mean, it wasn't paranormal, but I somehow made it fit. But he got me thinking I needed to expand. And with my disease, and I suffered from depression and a few other things, and luckily doing good now. But I said, there's people out there who are suffering from something similar or even worse than me, and they got to know there's hope. And so I decided, listen to the vibes. That'd be perfect, because I could interview life coaches and authors and actors, musicians. All these people have, they've gone through something to be successful, or they're helping people to be successful. And that's basically the gist of how that got to be.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, it's you know and that's something I wanted to talk about with you. I've had a couple people come on and talk about some of the things that they've experienced. One of the girls I've had on, and I think I mentioned this to you before, but she was someone that you look at her, you be like, oh, she should be a model, she should be on the cover of all these magazines, and she's been diagnosed with lupus and she was 11 years old. One of the last actors I interviewed, he suffered a permanent work injury a decade ago, and that's affected him. He had to retire, and now he can't do certain things, and he was able to bounce back from that. And one of the things you said was, everybody has a backstory, and I actually didn't mention this on your podcast, but I was adopted. A lot of people, look at me, look at the cool hair, look at how charismatic and boisterous I am, and they think, oh, this guy, he's full of himself. He thinks he's all that, which is slightly true. But it's definitely something that a lot of people, when they find out about some of the things I've been through, they be like, "Oh, really? I would have never thought that." So I wanted to ask you, firstly, if you don't mind, like,
Sure.
um, what when did you find out about the disease, illness that you have, and how was your journey overcoming it? Because a lot of people go through some of these things, and they don't have anybody to talk to. People don't want to listen to them. They just think they're complaining. Nobody really wants to hear them out or help them. So if you don't mind, talking about your story a little bit more about that. How did you, um, you know, were able to overcome it and use that to your advantage, after retirement?
Well, if I can kind of go back, and I'll give you the little backstory to that. When I was a kid, I was about 12. I started drinking and doing drugs and that kind of thing, and it got into a full blown habit, and I mean, it's pretty severe addiction. And I kind of got to the point where I just didn't care anymore, and I didn't eat right. I didn't take care of myself like I should have. I mean, I worked a lot of hours, but the time off, it was eating junk and drinking and all that, and ended up developing diabetes, which actually runs through the family. And I got to where I wasn't feeling very well, and I didn't know I had diabetes at the time, mind you. And I was 36 years old. And you know how it is when you get lazy, like on the weekend, and you're just kind of laying around, not doing anything. And when you try to do something, you just feel lazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way I felt. And so that's what I thought is, oh, I'm just, got the lazy. So and mind you, I was working nights. So, I slept during the day, and a lot of times I just laid there until it was time to go to work. Well, I decided this one day I was going to get up, and I was going to get motivated and, not feel that laziness. So worked around the house for a little bit, and for some reason I just got really, really tired, man. Like I had worked a 12-hour shift. And so I laid back down until it was time to go to work. I'm on the way to work, and I'm uh, only way to describe it is it felt like I had just smoked a big doobie. You know, it was very euphoric feeling, but not a good feeling.
Right.
So I got to work, and I was telling my boss, man, I don't feel good, but I don't want to lose my overtime, so I'm going to stick it out. And he's telling me what I was going to have to do that evening. And while we're sitting there, it's started to sound like he was going farther away from me. Like, that's weird. And then all of a sudden, it was like going into a tunnel. Everything was turning dark on me. And next thing you know, my boss told me my eyes had rolled up in my head, and I was just kind of like panting in a way. My chest was hurting. My heart was pounding real hard, and I couldn't function. I couldn't move. And they called the ambulance. When the ambulance got there, I was going into cardiac arrest, or I guess that's what you call it. I was having a heart attack. I'm not sure if that was the right term, but they gave me the nitroglycerin under the tongue and getting me stable, got me to the hospital, did emergency blood work on me. And if you're familiar with triglycerides, normal is about 150. Mine was 1500.
Wow.
Blood sugar, they say about 70, it's like 70 to 120, I think, is normal range. Mine was over 600. And so I was actually slipping into a coma, and fortunately they got to me to where they got me stable, and I didn't go that far. But that's when I found out I was diabetic. So went on the health journey, changed my eating habits. I quit drinking, quit the drugs, dropped about 60 pounds, got myself pretty healthy. And, that was also during the time that my first wife had left. All right, now fast forward, I'm with Michelle, and we were sitting in the living room. I believe it was Thanksgiving, or pretty close to it. And I'm sitting on the floor in front of her, and I stretched out my arms and kind of leaned back, and all of a sudden I get this sharp pain down my arm, and I'm like, I'm starting to feel like I'm having another heart attack. Freaking
Oof.
out. Go to the hospital. They check me out, and they're like, "No, your blood pressure's fine. You know, everything seems to be fine." But they wanted to do an MRI on me. Thank goodness the doctor was, thinking, "Hey, we need to check something else." And when they looked at my neck, it was crooked as a politician, and so they had to go in and they had to do surgery on my neck, and they did a fusion. Well, they noticed that it was the bones were starting to decay, and I they didn't really do anything for me at that time other than the fusion. Well, got to where as the months went on, I was getting a lot more back pains. You know, you get around my age, that's normal. You're going to have back pains. But this was getting worse. This was getting to where I couldn't hardly walk. So went back to another orthopedic doctor, and they got to looking, and they noticed that my bones in between each spinal bone, it looked like
Mhm.
you're going into a cave with the stalactites and stalagmites, that's the way the bones were starting to decay, and it was grinding on the discs. It was messing up my
Wow.
nerves. I get twitches, and I can't hold things sometimes. I lose my grip. Uh, uh, what's the term? I got a lot of neuropathy, and mind you, I already had neuropathy in my legs because of my diabetes. Now this was causing it, and so they ended up having to go in and do another bone graft, and they've got this little box, and it's got these screws that stick out of it to kind of hold what bone is there in place, and so they fused that together. That it went well, but I was still having a lot of pain and having a hard time walking. And then they went in and did some more X-rays, and like, okay, the decay is really starting to move. So we're recommending we're going to put you in the hospital for a few days, run some more tests, and do some other stuff, which they still haven't done yet, but that's coming soon. And I can walk, but it's after about 10 minutes, it gets to be very difficult.
Mm.
So if I'm going, say, to the store and we're only going to be there 20, 30 minutes, I can usually use my cane, and I can make it through, but I get to where I walk real slow. And if it's going to be a lot longer, then of course I have to take my wheelchair. It throws my balance off when I walk, that kind of thing. And like I said, it'd be very easy to get bitter and just say, what's the point, and just lay back. But I took this as an opportunity because I was fortunate enough to get on disability. So I have something to fall back on. But I didn't want that to be my career choice. I thought maybe one day I can make enough money doing a podcast that, I can live on that. But at the same time, I have a goal to help others, because I know how it feels to just want to give up. And I have a support system around me. The people that I meet on the podcast, I've made some wonderful friends. I can call some of these folks up at any time or text them and say, hey, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way, and they have words of encouragement. But I also knew that my old set of friends, as much as I love them, they still like to party. you know. You're in
Yeah.
50s and 60s. It's time to grow up, I think, you know.
Right.
So I say I love them from afar. So I just don't really talk to them as much. I don't hang out with them because I don't want to fall back into that. And the people that I surround myself with now are people who are they're in the midst of either becoming successful or they are successful. And you know, even once you've reached a very high level, you don't stop.
Right.
So that's encouraged me even more. I want to be that success and I want to keep going. And one of my friends told me, he says, you want to know how to be successful? He says, whatever talent that you may have, give it away for free. I'm like, give it away for free? How am I going to be successful if I'm giving it away for free?
Right.
So, mind you, he's an architect and he got on this website where you can do exactly that. Whatever kind of talent you have, you can just do whatever it is for free. And this guy needed some plans drawn up. And so he drew up these plans for him, gave it to him for nothing. And, you know, that's a lot of work. Next thing you know, it led to him associating with these other people who got him into a big project. Now he's doing multi-million-dollar deals, and all
Wow.
because he did that. So what I
Yeah.
do is for free. I mean, all you got to do is subscribe and watch the videos. And you know how YouTube and all those others work. You get to a certain level, you get paid for it. And so I'm giving you something for free, and but I'm getting something in return.
Amazing. But you know what, you're right. And you know, I've had this conversation, you know, outside of pocket, because you know, I'm still fairly new. It's been 3 years since the pandemic, since I started this podcast. But now I always tell actors all the time, you know, so many people see, you know, Joe Rogan or, you know, actor world, you see Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Will Smith, you see all of these Marvel actors making banks and banks of money. And the reality of the situation is when you look at it, most of these people, they didn't just wake up one day and, you know, make, you know, 15 million for a movie. Joe Rogan didn't just wake up one day, get a Spotify deal. You know, this is years and years of hard work, sacrifice, and putting yourself out there. You know, so many people I've met actors who got no credentials at all. You know, barely trained, don't have anything on their resume, reels, anything to show, and you know they're demanding payment for a role. You know they want money for everything, and it flabbergasts me. It's like, you know, how do you think you're going to get to that level where you want to be in a Marvel movie, you want to be on the TV show, you want to sponsors for, you know, whether it's Instagram, social media, or content creating. You know, you have to pay your dues. And I think so
Mm-hmm.
many people, you know, unfortunately, I think social media has made it so where a lot of people see, you know, all these people getting all of these amazing deals and sponsorships and making all this money, and they want that quick success. But they don't realize a lot of these people, you know, they've been doing it for decades, many years. You know, they may have, you know, use family, friends has financed some of these things for them to get to that point. So I want to ask you about that. You know, it is a true thing that you have to, you know, you know, work for free to get yourself out there. Do you still? I'm just curious. Do you find yourself at this point? Do you still find it hard doing it for free, or are you just enjoying, you know, just interviewing people and giving people a platform to speak their truth and, you know, spread a little bit of positivity?
Well, honestly, there are days where I just don't feel like doing it. You know, I can't explain. I mean, when you fight depression, that has a lot to do with it. But when I think of the friends that I've made and the um, the people that who will message me and thank me for the guests that I've had on the show, you know, there's people that go through so much, and we don't know their struggle, and they all of a sudden get a spark of hope, and they thank you for that. That that is a motivating thing. It's, and I mean, this is free to the public, but it costs me money. I have to pay for the editing tools. I have to pay for, the Zoom, and like, all these different things, like Buzzsprout. I have my stuff up on Buzzsprout. That costs money. That, this kind of thing. And I have to budget this out of a very small budget to begin with.
Yeah.
So that can be a factor in, slowing me down. But I'm selfish in the fact that I love making new friends. I'm a very sociable person, and if I can pat myself on the back a little bit and maybe sound a little arrogant, I've met some very famous people who now I have their numbers in my phone. I mean, musicians that I can remember buying their records when I was a kid and being so excited, and now I can talk to them on the phone. Or actors. I made friends with a guy who was on Ghost Hunters. I don't know if you ever watched that, but
oh yeah,
we are practically best friends now. He comes to Texas, and we meet up and go hang out, and I'll sometimes be at his events and help in any way that I can. But the other people who aren't famous, but they have skills in helping others, they're my friends. And so I get a lot out of this. It's a huge benefit for doing what I'm doing. And plus I have a lot of cool autographs on the wall now. So, but yeah, there's some selfish reasons there, but there's also good intentions, because I have passion for people, and I understand struggles, and I just want to be there to help in any way that I can.
absolutely. We're going to take a short little break, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned. We are back, and just to jump right into it, I've been doing acting for 13 years now. 2010, freshman year of high school, I started, and I've really only started getting paid from it like the last 3 years, and even with the pay, it's something that it gradually took me a while to accomplish. I met John Voight. A little backstory. So when I was in college from 2014 to 2018, I've always been into theater, but I started learning TV and film. So I was doing background in New York City during my college breaks, and one of the shows I did background for, John Voight was a part of, and the scene we were shooting the scene in Brooklyn. It was like an underground fight scene, and the cast and director asked me to come back because I was only supposed to do one day, but I made friends with everybody, and I got to meet John Voight, and I talked to him for about 5-10 minutes. And I remember I was talking to him, and he was asking me about my aspirations and where I trained and stuff like that. And one of the things he told me was, just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll find your way. Don't rush anything. Don't try to outpace yourself. When your time is ready, it'll come. And it always stuck to me because and I've met other celebrity actors on sets and worked with them a few times, but it made me think. It's like after a while, I used to hate background. I'm like, what? I should be in front of the camera. That's where I deserve to be, right? But it's a process. When your time is when your time is going to come, is going to come. I don't think at that point I was ready to be a main star on a TV show. I wasn't fundamentally ready to do that. So I had to learn how to be patient, and acting. The entertainment industry will teach you about patience because it's all about rejection. No, no, no. It's not your turn. Wait, get in the back of the line. You're not ready. And I know that, I have one of my buddies. He's been on movies. He had his own show on Netflix for a while, and I talk to him all the time. And even for him, people see his success and they say, "Oh, I want to be like him." I know him. I know that success came later. He started acting when he was 4 years old. He didn't really start getting that success until he was about 20 years old. So I mean, it's a long gap of trials and tribulations. Doing free work, doing smaller independent things, and then you start building up that resume. And I try to teach people. I may not be Tom Cruise yet. I don't have the bank account of Dwayne the Rock Johnson, but I've been doing it a while, and it's all about patience. If you love what you do it because you enjoy it, not because you want the monetary benefit of it. That's one of the reasons why I didn't like LA. And I'm gonna get back to you, but that's one of the reasons why when I moved to LA in 2019, I noticed that a lot of people were more about I want to become a famous star. Not they didn't want to be an actor. They just wanted to be famous and make a lot of money. And I asked him, hey, you got any projects coming up? Oh no, it's been like 5 years since I've done something. But you know what? My time is coming. Marvel's gonna be calling my door. And that's not how it works. You pay your dues and everything. So I want to ask you, just to circle back because I'm sure a lot of people want to know a little more about your experience. Coming back from learning about such a crazy health scare. At the age of 36, which is still pretty young. I know you mentioned about depression, and I'm sure during that time, going through all of the health issues that you faced, it's a very scary time. It's not easy. I don't think anybody could prepare for something like that. Um, and I know you mentioned about having a support system, which a lot of people unfortunately don't. How were you able to overcome those things, and who helped you? I'm sure you're going to mention Michelle, but how was that journey for you? Getting inspiration and having people support you throughout that period in your life.
Well, when let's are you talking about when I found out about the spinal disease?
Yeah.
Um, you know, you meet certain people who are more acquaintances than they are friends, but they still seem to be a great support system. And I used to work part-time as a security guard up at this venue called the HEB Center. And I mean, these were only people I hung out with at work. And when I started using the cane for the first time, they still let me work security, which that was a blessing. They could have easily let me go, but they didn't. They kept me on. There was no reason for me to stop. Other people were willing to give me a chance. But and with my wife, I mean, of course, she is my support system. But I had gotten away from God years ago, and that's a long story. But she encouraged me to get back on my spiritual path. And even though I still I don't live the full Christian life, I guess you'd say. But I still have a relationship with God. I still talk to him. And without God in my life, and to have him to talk to when there's no one else around, that's that's beyond compare. If you don't have something to believe in, then what's the point? That's the way I look at life. What's the point if you don't have something to believe in? And you know, I got into doing the podcasting and then started to meet more people. And yeah, there's acquaintances there, but I have friends on there. I mean, people I can talk to every day. People that, check on me and come to see me, and friends and family, that's everything too. You know, without that, what's the point? Who wants to be by themselves? And having love in your heart, You know what I mean? If you're going
Yeah.
around being hateful and spiteful all the time, looking for reasons to be pissed off, I can, I meet people who they have every reason in the world to be pissed off. Um, I might have told you about her last time we spoke, but I had a lady on my show who I think she had 6 to 9 months left to live,
I remember. Yeah.
and
Crazy story.
yeah, she had wrote a book, and then she messaged me the other day. She got another book written. It's published. She can't hardly move around. She had been abused sexually and physically. Um, I mean, she practically lost everything in her life. She had every reason to be bitter. She had every reason to be hateful towards the world. But she's spending the rest of her life before she leaves trying to help other people. And by God, if she can have love in her heart and she can keep trying, why can't I? That's inspiration in itself.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I remember you told me that story, and it gave me goosebumps because, like you said, there's always somebody out there who is going through something a lot worse. And I remind my girlfriend about this all the time because we had a conversation like this, and you know, I think I might have mentioned it, maybe off camera to you last week, but when I was in college, I worked at a warming house for 4 years, and at first I started as a volunteer, and basically a warming house is like a soup kitchen that my school owns in the town next to us. And a lot of the volunteers were low income. Most of them were recovering drug addicts, people in recovery, and living in halfway houses, right? And so they, part of their, being in a halfway house or any program that they're in was doing community service. And at first, I was uneasy about it. I was like, I grew up in New York. I've seen how some of these people act, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to be around them. And I got to meet a lot of them, and I'm still friends with a few of them on Facebook. And I got to learn about this story. How a lot of them, at this point, a lot of them, late 20s, 30s, some of them in their 40s. But they're telling me about the story. How they just having fun as kids. You're trying all types of things. Maybe your family's not really paying attention to you, so you just running away from home, and you get into doing drugs, and a lot of them. One girl in particular, I won't give too much of her story, but I remember I had a sit down conversation while we was cleaning up after doing service, and she was telling me about how she was abused, and nobody cared about her at all. So she used to run away from home, run away with boys, and she started, getting into heroin and crystal meth and all that stuff. And she was pretty young. I was what, 18, 19 at this point. She must have been like 24, and she was pretty. I'll admit, I did flirt with her a little bit before she told me a story and everything, but when you look at her, you wouldn't think, how she messed this up. But it's one of those things where she was suffering in silence. Nobody was there to help her. Nobody, what a common thing a lot of these people told me was nobody was there to support me. Like you said, they have friends who didn't care about their health. They was just, oh, let's party, knowing that these people, I can't be around that. And a lot of them slipped up because they had family and friends who didn't care about their recovery. They graduate from their programs, they go back to their environment, and they put them right back in those situations. Now they relapse and they're going back to the same thing. So it made me think, last week when we was talking, it made me think about that because I still have so many profound memories talking to them, and it made me grow as a person. But no, nonetheless, I want to get into your podcast because I think it's important for a lot of people to know your backstory and to understand your pockets because, like you said, there's people out here who can just give up. You find out about a health issue like that you went through. You could give up, throw in the towel. I'm gonna just lay in bed all day, watch TV, and I don't give a crap, right? But you chose to do something different, look creative, and find new ways to to move and use your options that you had. So the Vibes Network broadcast, the podcast that you host. Tell me, when did you start that, and what was the motivation for you behind to starting the podcast?
Well, I like I said, I started. Well, let me go back. I'm can I tell you how my wife and I met, because this kind
Oh,
of leads to it.
absolutely. Let's do it.
So I used to get on this dating app, and
Is it Tinder?
no, it wasn't Tinder.
Oh, not Grinder, was it?
Wasn't Grinder. But everyone that I met on there, it kind of was a flop. I met some that they would try to sell me food stamps
Ooh,
when I met them. Okay.
Wow. I've heard that on TV, but not in person.
And when I didn't want to buy the food stamps, all of a sudden, well, you're too fat and you're not as good looking as your picture and all this other crap that comes.
Of course.
So I'd just about given up on it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this one more try. If it doesn't work out, then the heck with it. Well, I got messaged by this nice looking young lady, and who happened to be Michelle. And we actually spent about 2 or 3 months just talking. That's all we did. It was either talking on the phone or texting. And we got to know each other. And finally, we decided we're going to meet up and we're going to go on a date. I'm excited. A few hours before, she messages me and she says, I'm sorry, I have to cancel our date. Something came up that it's kind of important. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, another flop. I'm done,
Right.
But then she started texting me, and she texted me all evening. And finally, I kind of got up the nerve to say, what are you doing that was so important that you had to cancel our date, but you're still texting me? I'm like, surely she's not out on another date and talking to me at the same time, right?
I hope not.
About 10 minutes of silence. And then I finally get a text message. She says, I have to tell you something, but I was too afraid to tell you before. I didn't know how you'd take it. I'm like, oh, okay, what is it? She says, well, I'm a paranormal investigator, and we had a case come up where a child was involved in being attacked by a spirit of some sort, and we came to help the family. And my reaction was, well, marry me now, because that was something I'd always wanted to do. So,
wow.
To make a long story short, I was able to join the group she was on, and we left that group and tried a couple others and finally decided to do our own thing. But I loved the paranormal so much, I felt like I got to do something more. So I started podcasting. And I know this isn't relevant to the story, but my first big name paranormal celebrity was one of the Ghost Brothers. I don't know if you've seen that show or not, but it was
I've heard that. I haven't watched it.
Well, Marcus Harvey had me laughing so hard I almost couldn't finish the podcast. But anyway, that went on for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And that's when I met Adrian Paul, and him and I talked about how to take care of arthritis. That was the beginning stages of me having to be on a cane. And that's when I was like, I could do something more and, help other people. And so that was, gosh, it's been 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years.
Oh, wow, recently, not too far. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So YouTube, I think I've been on YouTube 3 years. So that's the length of it, and that's pretty much how I got into it. Started out paranormal and went into positivity.
Oh, well, so how did you end up coming up with is this the podcast you do now, is it just a like an offspring, if you will, of the paranormal, your first podcast, or was that an idea you came up with sooner, about maybe something happened or inspired you to do a separate one about positivity?
Well, because of talking to Adrian Paul and the fact that he wasn't related to the paranormal, I felt like I needed to split. And so I carefully sat down and thought, what can I do? And so I thought of hey, this is a podcast, so and I'm trying to bring good vibes. Why not listen to the vibes? And that became the name of that show. Well, I'd also been a part of a network, and they didn't like me doing live stuff and my own thing on the side. So I was like, well, I'm out of here. But I also had met people who I met this comedian, and his name's Chris Hopkins, and Chris and I got to be pretty good friends. And he was moving. I forgot where he lived before, but that's irrelevant. He was moving to Texas, but he he talked to a lot of UFC fighters, and I mean, he had pictures of him and Ronda Rousey and these other people, and he liked talking about sports. And I'm like, I mean, let's build a network. So I thought up, well, we're doing so many different things and still a good vibes type deal. Why don't we call it the Vibes Broadcast Network? And I had a couple of other paranormal people, but let's face it, some people aren't as committed as you are.
Yeah.
And I mean, Chris is wanting to come back. I mean, he had things going on in his life, and of course, he's a comedian. He's trying to hustle and get gigs, and the whole lockdown stuff really set him back. And um, he's I hope he gets back soon, because he's an awesome guy. And that's how the network came to be. That's why I called the channel the Vibes Broadcast Network, because I wanted a variety of stuff. I wanted something for everyone, whether you're into the paranormal, or you're looking for some kind of inspiration or motivation, or you like sports, or you like comedy, you know, just about anything that you can offer. I wanted it to be a part of the network. So, and that's my
That's
story, and
incredible.
I'm sticking to it.
That's right. This good vibes, and I want to talk about the vibe. When we talked, right? I want to get into a couple things. I think one of the things we talked about was the negativity that our society lives in. People don't talk to each other, communicate with each other no more, and you know, I want to get your opinion on this because you've had a couple celebrities on your show. Surprisingly, it kind of surprised me that a lot of them are willing to be open and honest because, quite frankly, unfortunately, a lot of times if they see certain things, cancel culture comes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is your take on cancel culture and everything? We talk about it, but I want to get your opinion on it. I've been seeing a lot of Woody Harrelson. I was on SNL not too long ago, and he was getting slammed on social
Mm-hmm.
media for his takes. Other celebrities coming out, speaking their truth and getting criticized. I know one actor actually got fired from one of the shows he did. Although I saw his tweets, I was like, you probably should have been a little more careful saying certain things, but nonetheless, cancel culture, people, we just live in a very negative, confusing world. What do you think about everything that's happening? Because part of me, I don't like it. I'm trying that. That's why I love your podcast. I love what you do because it's all about positivity. But unfortunately, the outside forces are trying to penetrate
Yes.
that force. But what is your opinions on everything going on?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's people out there that say things that I don't like, you know, and if I don't like them, I just don't listen to them. But I don't want them to be deplatformed just because they're saying something I don't like. And, it might sound controversial to some people, but even if it's hateful, you still should be able to say whatever you want to say. That's what this country is all about, is being able to say whatever you want. And if you don't like it, then there should be consequences to it. Just don't listen to it. Just ignore them, you know? The Just look at Marvel, okay? Marvel's been putting out garbage stuff, and they
Oh,
like to
doing
put a
use.
yeah, and they worry more about an agenda than telling a good story, and that's with a lot of things. So what happens is people just stop going to the movies. You this new I haven't seen it yet, but the Ant-Man and the Wasp started out pretty good the first weekend, but it had a terrible drop off. You know, a lot of other things that, you know, when they're, and I'm sorry if anybody gets offended, but when you race swap a character, what you're saying is that person wasn't valuable enough to do a a good story of, you know, whatever race they might be from, and you have to go back and use a traditionally white character. And I'm sorry, I just feel like there's enough good stories from black culture or Hispanic culture or Asian culture, whatever, that they could stand on their own. Why do
Right.
you have to swap out a white character? You're saying that white people are more relevant? Their character was more relevant than what your people might be able to tell? There's stories from Africa. I don't understand why they can't go in and adopt those and make movies out of them. They have um historical stories to tell. They have their own uh what's the word I'm looking for? You know, they're
Origin?
like origin stories, or not so much origin stories, but when, you know, they have their own tales that they make up that are, you know, maybe they're moral stories, or, you know, teaching you some kind of lesson, or maybe they've made up a character or something they want to talk about, you know, or whatever.
Right.
I say give them a try. I think people would go see it. I think people want to see something original. They're tired of the same old, and all you're doing is just swapping the color of the character.
Right.
So that's why people are not going to see it, because there's not originality there. You're just, that's all you're doing is you're changing the color of the character. So people are like,
Right.
I'm tired of the same story and you just doing this. But at the same time, if that's what you want to do, you should be allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Speak with your pocketbook. That's all I got to say. Speak with your pocketbook. I don't think people should be canceled for all this stuff. And then to go back and to judge somebody from the way they felt 20 years ago,
That's
they,
crazy.
they may not feel the same way now. You know, when I was a kid, my father was a very prejudiced person, and I didn't quite get the whole, you know, why you should hate somebody just because of the color of their skin. But at the same time, I used the same language my dad did, because that's what was used around me.
Right.
But then I get into school, and I'm meeting all these other kids, and all we wanted to do was play with each other and have a good time. And then I started to realize, wait a second, this is not right. And I didn't want that tradition to keep going. So I didn't teach my kids to be that way. I didn't use that language around my kids. I mean, my kids are half Hispanic, if that tells you anything. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, if I just don't think it should matter.
Right.
So are you going to judge me from the language I used as a kid to the way I am now? That's not fair. You know, if if somebody, I don't know, they, for whatever reason, they might have not liked somebody or something 20 years ago, but something changed their mind and they're a different person now. Why are we going back and doing that? That's not right. Judge a person by who they are right now. You know, what did you ever see that movie American History X?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so that character, you saw how he was, and then he gets into jail and he meets a black guy and they befriended him, and the guy practically kept him from getting his butt whooped, and then he realized, wait, the way I was thinking before was all wrong. Well, don't you think you should judge him by that and not the way it used to be? Yeah, hold him. Yeah, if he committed a murder, yeah, you should hold him accountable for that. He paid that price, but don't think of him as being that same guy he used to be.
I
So,
agree.
yeah.
I agree. You know, when you're a public figure, unfortunately, this is what happens. And I think a lot of these platforms are rewarding people for doing stuff like this, where they go through someone's feed from like 20 years ago and say, "Oh, he said this. Oh, it's time to get him out of here." I'm not a big fan of it. I have spoke about it once or twice on my podcast, and there are instances where some people do deserve a little bit of accountability. Like there was a comedian, Lil Duval. I actually haven't done it on my podcast, but there was a comedian named Lil Duval. He was making some. I get back then Twitter's always been ruthless, right? But he was saying some outrageous things about sleeping with his minor daughter and stuff, and I'm like, what?
That's messed up.
Yeah, I don't know how that's funny. Stuff like that. It's like, okay, maybe I don't know if he should get his whole career thrown in the garbage, but he got some answers to some questions he need to answer. But for me, I just look at our society, whether it's politics, the headlines, the social media, everything is it's like thriving on negativity. I see some of these Instagram channels dedicated, like World Star, dedicated to people getting beat up on the street, people videotaping crimes and not stopping it. For me, it's just like, how do we get to a point where we're uplifting each other? Movies, for instance. I get access all the time. One of the parks I actually go to work out. One of the guys, older gentleman, he always asks me about acting, about certain actors and movies and what the climate is now. And one of the things I always talk about is for me, although diversity and inclusion is becoming a thing now in Hollywood, I do think there is a lot of issues. And I think that for me, I was sitting with the director for the movie I did last year. Third week is coming out sometime this year. And I was telling him, it's like, I'm tired of the tropes of, minorities getting casted as criminals, and it's unoriginal, it's uninspiring, and we need to move away from that. And I think Marvel has done a good job. I will give them credit. Shang-Chi, Black Panther, they have made some great, movies for, culture pieces per se. But other than superhero movies, when you watch the standard, movie, whether it's on the streaming platform and the movies, it's the same common trope. The Asian is the dumb, can't see driver. The Black Latinos, gangbangers, criminals. White people. Is usually whatever they decide they want to do. But it's like the same lazy writing, and that's one of the critical things I don't like. Is it's the same negativity. Some of my friends, they always tell me, "Hey, you should audition for this show," and it's usually I don't know if you watch Power or anything like that. But there's shows that created by a rap artist named 50 Cent. He's a New Yorker, and I love him. I love what he's doing. He's given people an opportunity to act and make money, right? But it's like, again, it's the same theme of the whole themes of these shows are criminals, gang banging. I mean, street life. It's like, you know, I wish people would move away from that and do more positivity pieces. And I think it starts with entertainment, right? I think if people, most people are scrolling through Instagram now, TikTok, sitting in the comfort of their own home now. People are not going to the movies as much as they used to. They go on those streaming platforms. I think if more shows started doing more funny but positive pieces, our society would start shifting a little bit. But turn of you corn, every corner you turn. Excuse me. Whether it's social media, anything, it's negativity. This person killed this person. Democrats versus Republicans, blacks versus whites, whites versus Asians. I mean, it's like a constant war, and I don't like it. It's just like we've talked about this. It's like everybody's in their own group now. One group is better than the other group. One group is more oppressed than the other group. This group is a victim of this group, and it's just like a never ending, constant negativity, battle. And my thing is, okay, we could deal with that. It's just people don't sit down and talk like we do anymore. People,
That's right.
oh, you're this, you're that. Go screw yourself. I remember I got into an argument with this guy on Twitter. I want to get your opinion on this, but I got in an argument with a guy on Twitter about UFC, right? And it wasn't anything bad, but he saw my agent's my agency, my agent's agency in my bio, and he actually emailed them trying to get me, trying to get them to remove me off the roster. And it's like, for what? I didn't call you anything racist. I didn't say anything homophobic to you. You just disagree with me, and you decided that you was going to try to get, someone who can give me opportunities to fire me for what? That's the thing I don't like is people too quick to try to get you fired, or people got families to feed, people got lives to live, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's messed up. If you have a problem with somebody, you should be able to talk to them and them only. Why we got to bring everybody else into it? Everything. Okay, I talked to a lady the other day. She's a health and wellness coach, and I was telling her I don't understand why there's this big push for women empowerment. What is it that I'm not getting? Because okay, I can understand on an individual basis, you've got, let's put it this way, you got a woman who may have grown up in a perfect environment and never had anything happen to her, and she's become successful. But you got this other woman who's been sexually abused or physically abused, and it was by a man. Okay, I can understand there's a problem with the woman that was abused, but why is this woman who's never had anything happen to her, and she's successful, why is she having, what's her problem? Why,
Right.
what's the deal? And you can say the same thing about a man. Some guys grow up in a good environment and they become successful, and then there's some who have either been sexually or physically abused. That's a one-on-one kind of thing, and that goes out into the real world here. If you and I have a disagreement, well, then why isn't that just between you and I? Why do you have to get your job involved?
Ace.
Why do you have, if you belong to that agency, or you belong to I don't know, you belong to the Knights of Columbus or something. I don't know. Why do they have to be involved? Why can't that just be a one-on-one thing? I don't get why you have to go that far.
Right.
I don't know.
It's a mess, and I unfortunately we live in a society everybody has to walk on eggshells. I mean, everybody, whether you're actor for a Marvel movie or you work at McDonald's. I mean, nobody's safe, and I think that's my biggest issue. Is like I've realized I can't speak about certain things freely. I have to reserve my opinion. I don't post any opinions on social media anymore because I don't want to be demonetized. I don't want nobody. I don't want Luckily for that dude, I have more than one agent, so he tried and failed. But it's just like why even take it that far? Why you like you said? I know people who they told me stories about they get in arguments with people and their jobs are being called. It's like, so you're going to get me fired so I can't pay rent now? I have a son at home, not me, but some of the people I have I've talked to, they got families. You're going to lose. You're going to get me fired from my livelihood to provide food on the table just because you didn't like the president I voted for. Nuts, man. It's crazy. But I do see at some point maybe there is a solution, but I think with social media it's just going to be a constant wheel. Like it's going to just keep repeating itself. I think it's going to have to be at a point where everybody's just sick and tired of it. But many people are monetizing off of the negativity. I see a lot of content creators monetized and making money off of negativity. It's just it's become ingrained in our society. You see people get famous off of negativity, doing stupid things. That's just our society is rewarding that behavior. So that's probably why people are incentivized to call your job or get you fired or whatever, just because they know that, hey, all I gotta do is call and say, hey, he said this racist, homophobic thing to me, and you're on the unemployment line tomorrow. It's ridiculous.
Well, and you have people that say that they're tired of racism, and okay, well then why are you posting videos of what's wrong with white people and that kind of thing, and all you're doing is saying all these negative, awful things? That's not helping anybody. That's just going to make things worse. And if you have someone out there who say they already are racist and prejudiced, well, you're basically confirming everything they believe, so you're reinforcing their hatred. Or you have someone out there who wasn't, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, if you're going to hate me no matter what I do, then I'm just going to be a hateful, spiteful person too. I refuse to fall for that. Why? Just because you've got all these people out here, okay, you don't like me, you hate me, fine, but I'm not going to be that person. I just wanted to bring up a story of when I was about 13 years old. If you live in around Houston, you'd know this area, but it's called Barrett Station. Okay, Barrett Station is made up mainly of Black people, and you've always were told you didn't go in that area, but there was a house that my dad worked at. We were putting in a new air conditioning system, and the family there, they treated me like I was part of the family. And I mean, they fed me. They would bring me something to drink when, I got sweat pouring off of me working up in a hot attic, and their son and I got to be friends. That's the stories that we should hear, is how we helped each other and we cared about each other, instead of these stories of, well, white people are bad or Black people are bad, and it doesn't help anyone. No. And the media makes it worse. That's the thing. The media, they get money because people are watching, and people watch. They love to watch the controversy. And you know how we were talking about the movies a while ago. There's a Will Smith movie, and I forget.
Is it? Are you talking about Emancipation?
No, I was talking about it. It's not that old, but it's older. It was a Life of Happiness or something like that.
Oh, Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness, yeah.
Classic.
Okay, here's a guy who went to living on the street and trying to survive and doing everything he could to become something successful. And not only did he become successful at that job, but he ended up opening his own business, and he was able to sell it. And I mean, the dude is rich. Why aren't we telling more stories like that? Why aren't we finding people out there that have struggled and they've overcome? Why don't we tell more stories of how people help each other even though they have nothing in common? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, one person's white, one person's Black, or whatever. It could be some rich guy helps some homeless guy or something. Why aren't we telling more stories like that? Instead, we're always focusing on the negative. And we're never going to change anything if we don't change the heart. And we have to do that with positivity.
No, you're 100% right. For me, the pandemic, I thought was going to be the turning point for that, because I saw this all brewing, before the pandemic happened. I thought, people are at home, people are with their families, friends, people are able to take a break, maybe figure things out. And for some reason, it didn't work. It just made everything worse. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because more people was active on social media. It started off with George Floyd, and then it just kind of went out of, went all over the place. But for me, I hope at some point people do get to that point. Like I said, it can't just be superhero movies, and I love superhero movies like anybody else. I would love to do a superhero movie, right? But you know, the days of making a Training Day, a Pursuit of Happiness, a Bronx Tale, Scarface, and all that stuff are long gone. They're just not going to make money in the movies. It seems like social media has made our attention span is not what it used to be, right? Most people want to see quick, shoot them up, bang them, you know, people flying through buildings, crazy CGI things. That's what our attention span has been become, and a lot of these, corporations, whether it's entertainment or social media, knows that that's what people want to see, right? And that's what I said. Like it seems to me like controversy and bad behavior is what is in right now. You know, people getting famous off. There was a guy. He actually did a follow up interview because his fame started dwindling down after it. But he became popular over all social media. He started doing interviews on major networks. His content was him going around on the street, people who sell stuff on the street. So in New York, we have a lot of people on the street that sets up tables and they sold jewelry, handbags, or whatever the case may be. And he would go on and jump on their products, or he would snatch something and run away. And that was with his content. It was messing with these independent, people who was just trying to make a quick, make some money. And he became famous off of that. And then you had Bad Baby who went on Dr. Phil and was, disrespecting her mother. She got a record deal right after that. It just seems to me, and like I said, I'm not hating on these people per se, but that's why society is becoming rewarding that bad behavior. Hey, if you act something, you do something stupid or act something crazy, you're gonna make a lot of money, and I think that's why you see a lot of kids. Now, I worked at a tennis facility in Long Island, and a lot of these kids, you can't read a book, but they know how to do all these TikTok trends. Your parents are paying all this money, for this tennis facility I was at. Amazing facility. I mean, it was not cheap to send the kids there. I'm like, how you come to a sports camp and you're more worried about recording TikToks than actually doing sports? I mean, and the parents, you tell the parent, hey, kids are not listening, they're not doing this, and they get no discipline. They just write back on social media. I'm like, why are 10-year-olds on Instagram? Why are 10-year-olds on TikTok? It mind blows me. It really does. And I guess I don't even know what to say. I'm flabbergasted by all of it. I think social media, as much as I love it, it's my generation. It has ruined our society in a way. It's given many people opinions that maybe don't deserve to share those opinions. And it's just made people a little more comfortable to be a keyboard warrior. I don't like Twitter. I'll go on Twitter, just to see what's trending or whatever. But it's basically a place where people like to troll, make outrageous things, and get each other, in trouble. TikTok, I'm seeing all these trends, happening. My girlfriend's a big TikToker, but she showed me some of these things. I'm like, I don't know if you heard, but I think it's UMass. It's a trend now that's been happening. They've made this concoction. I forgot the name of it. I've never heard of this thing before, but this past weekend, it got so bad that about 25 ambulances had to make a call to this one university over the weekend. I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts. And like, I just hope we get to a place that eventually, it's not going to be anytime soon. I can tell you that now. But at some point, we start steering more towards, people trying to uplift each other, give people advice. even fitness. I used to follow a lot of fitness profiles. They went from, trying to educate people to telling people, hey, you can eat cheeseburgers and sit on the couch and still lose 20 pounds in a week. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I'll watch some reaction videos sometimes on YouTube. So I guess I'm kind of guilty in that sense, but I don't subscribe to those channels where all they talk about is negative stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Where, somebody gets on and says, well, if you misgender me or you call me the wrong pronoun, I'm gonna punch you in the face. And all they do is complain about that kind of stuff, or it's something to do with racism or politics and all that. Most of the channels I subscribe to are, guys that are going out trying to find paranormal stuff. You think this is a ghost or not, or whatever. Are there life coaches, or maybe it's the musician who's promoting their music, or that kind of stuff. I don't go for. I've yet to subscribe to one of those TikTok channels where they talk about anything other than something positive in that sense.
Right.
Now, I have a grandson who's 7 years old, and my daughter monitors him, but she let him have a TikTok channel. And he does cute little videos where he did one where he would be on one end of the room and he snaps his finger and all of a sudden he's on the other side of the room. Just something creative, funny little stuff like that. Or he has a song that he likes and he'll have a little skit that goes along with it or whatever. Those are cute, but at least his mama is there monitoring what he does, doesn't let him just go off and do it on his own. But he's autistic and he needs an outlet. So in that sense, I think it's a good thing. If a kid's being creative, then okay, but parents should know what they're doing instead of these, 8-year-old kids twerking to some video or music. That's not productive. Another thing is kids need to be encouraged so they can be successful in life. My grandson, he decided that he wanted to make money, and his goal was he was going to make enough money to buy his mama a house.
Hey.
So he came up with this idea that he was going to breed and sell puppies. All right. He had a one of those wiener dogs, and he's going to breed it and sell off the puppies and whatnot. But my daughter's like, well, how are you going to get the money to buy the puppy or buy the dogs? So he saw a video of someone making these things. He calls them freshies. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they take these little plastic balls and they add some kind of a liquid to it that gives it a smell, and they cook it in the oven and it makes whatever shape they put it in. And so he's selling these things, right? And
Interesting.
anyway, he went with his other grandparents. They have a booth at a flea market, and they sell these cups that his grandmother decorates. And they let him set up a little table next to theirs, and he's selling his freshies. Now, he borrowed the money from his parents and got all the materials he needed. The first weekend, he sold enough to pay them back and made a profit.
Wow.
And then he just kept going back, and people are buying these things up like crazy. Well, then he got the idea of buying pins and decorating pins with those little bedazzled jewels or whatever. And people are buying those things up like crazy. So why aren't we teaching kids to do stuff like that? I mean, he's 7 years old and he's autistic, and he's doing, if he can do it, and other kids can do it. I mean, help him set up a lemonade stand or something. I don't know, but teach him something productive instead of teaching your kid how to twerk in clothes that they have no business wearing. And doing stuff that I'm ashamed to watch adults do.
Yeah. And that was the point I was more speaking to. It's not so much about my little sister's 7 years old. I didn't know she was on TikTok until she showed me it. And like she likes singing and she likes dancing. So my mom knows she does it, and I saw some of the things, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad she's keeping an eye out because even though she's not doing anything sexual, there's always somebody out there preying on little kids, right? But
Yeah.
it's more so the kids that just like no supervision, no
Mm-hmm.
supervision. It's like I was working a dance competition, uh, right after I graduated college, just over the summer, just to get a quick paycheck, and I met a lot of the dance moms. I met UFC legend Chris Wyman. I got to meet a lot of people, right? But this was a dance competition with kids from I think the age of 3 and then went up to high school. So about 15, 16. And it was just like, man, I was security, so I had to make sure nobody was running into the auditorium while someone was on stage performing. This is serious stuff, competing, for national level. And I was talking to some of the fathers there, some of the mothers there, and they tell me stories about some of these kids that participate in these competitions and the things they do with the phone. Like one dad was telling me how some of the girls when they get off the stage, they start recording them twerking in their little outfits. I'm talking about 6, 7 year old girls here. Like, and they put them on TikTok and all this stuff. I'm like, how your parents not know what you're doing? And like that's the thing that bothers me is the little kids that are on all these social media platforms doing what they see, they're copying it. They look, I'm sure if you ask some of these little kids, who you look up to, who's your favorite, athlete, whatever, favorite celebrity, it's going to be some type of music artist, usually one of the rap artists, or it's going to be somebody on these platforms that aren't doing family friendly activity. But that's because when you go on their feed, I look at my feed, the algorithm is all over the place. But I used to see comedy videos. Now I see more, provocative things. I'm not complaining. I'm an adult here, but for a little kid, they seeing that thing. They probably looking at these people getting all these views and say, hey, that'd be fun. And that's the part that's bothering me a little bit is how accessible kids are getting into social media. And like I said, I've met more kids who can't read, but they know their way around TikTok. That's that's the scary part for me.
Well, if a mom and dad are going to give a phone to a kid, especially some child who's 7, 8 years old, you need to have some kind of monitoring there. My grandson, he has a phone. Okay, it was one that we were going to throw it away or whatever, but all it does is he can watch his YouTube videos, and his mama put a parental control where he can only watch kids videos on there, and she also put a time limit on it, so once that limit's up he can't watch it for the rest of the day. And he also can play his little games he likes to play on there. You have to have some kind of parental control over what your kids are doing. You can't let them run amok. Okay, let's face it, kids are going to be kids. They don't know no better. They're gonna emulate whatever else they're seeing, just like you said. If a child has a talent, say singing, or they know how to do dance or ballet or something like that, if you want to video something like that, that's cool. I think that helps build their confidence. They'll be able to perform in front of an audience. But to have them dancing provocatively, I'm not a prude by any means, but I don't even like watching adults doing all that twerking and stuff. I especially don't want to see a little 8-year-old kid doing that.
Right.
So if it's a creative kind of thing, then okay. But if it's this other garbage, eating Tide Pods and all that other junk that they were doing,
Cinnamon challenge.
yeah, I just don't
Man,
think you can't trust a kid with things like this. You just can't.
kids are curious. I mean, let me, like I said, I don't want to get too much into it. I don't want people to be like, oh, this is getting like a soap opera here. So I do want to say it is cool. Like you said, I do agree. I do think it is nice that kids are able to use social media to, show their talent and make money. One of my little she knows. I use YouTube, but I don't go on it as much, right? But one of her people she subscribes on there is I think he's about 10 now. He's a little kid. He has like 5-10 million subscribers on YouTube, and he makes bank, and he does like these outrageous family friendly things with his family, and he makes a lot of money. I think he got so big, he was featured. He was featured in I think it was the New York Thanksgiving parade. I think they had a whole blog thing for him, and he was on. He was a part of the celebration, and like I think it is cool in that aspect that social media has allowed many people to make money and monetize over their skills because back then, unless you was able to get on what America's Got Talent or maybe someone discovered you didn't get that opportunity. But now I will say I do go on social media. I do see a lot of kids, usually doing some outrageous, crazy things in a good way, talented things. One of the kids I follow, he does like BMX stunts, and like the things he do with this bike is phenomenal. That stuff
Mm-hmm.
I actually appreciate. I do think allowing kids to share their talent, make money, get endorsements, and become faces of Nike and stuff like that. I do think in the school, and I will say it's just a good and bad thing with everything. I just feel like nowadays it's just more focused on the negative, but I do think there is great things, whether it's podcasts and stuff. We're able to make money in multiple ways now. We don't have to work a 9 to 5 corporate job to make, to sustain a living. You can use your skill piece, whether it's talking, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, doing tricks, jumping off of cliffs. You can monetize anything nowadays and make money. I see some of the most
Mm-hmm.
craziest thing, not craziest, but this dude got a whole following just by doing simple reactions to things. And it was just his face expression became like a whole thing that people just want to subscribe to see him react to. So it is good things. I just hope that at some point our society gets away from shining a light on the negativity and start shining a light on the positive things. But I think with time we'll get to that point. I just think now everybody's looking for a payday. So what's the payday? I gotta chase the negative headlines. That's the thing.
Agreed. They should
But
use that money for when they get older and go to college. When it comes to those kids, I encourage my daughter, hey, let's get my grandson his own YouTube channel. A lot of the cute little things he does, I think other kids are going to want to watch, and that way he can save up for college, or maybe by the time he hits 16 he's got his money for his car. Let's teach these kids how to make their own money. I mean, my parents taught me how to go mow yards and do other stuff to make money as a kid, and stop
right.
spoiling them by just giving it to them. That you're not teaching them nothing doing that. But
Oh,
like you said,
absolutely.
next subject.
Let's move on. But one of the things we talk about. One of the things I just want people to take away from this is sit down and have a conversation. Like it's so bad. Like even for me, there's certain family members I can't talk to at all. You know,
I know.
and it's just I don't like the divisiveness our society's become. You share this story. I'll share one real quick. One of my buddies from college, he was actually on my very first episode of the podcast I did, and we lived across the hall freshman year, and we became good friends. We played back then we was playing like NBA, NFL on Xbox, and we still play. I play more like UFC stuff now. He plays more like the Nintendo stuff, but he different family. He is from Long Island. I'm from the inner city. His family a little more well off than mine, and his family were amazing. Republicans too, but not all his family, but him, most of his family, Republicans and stuff. And me growing up, I was told Republicans are all racist, they hate black people and all this stuff, right? And I got to meet him. I met his family. They used to take me out all the time. They knew about my family life, how crazy that thing was. And they even allowed me to stay for breaks while we was in college. I even moved in with them for a year or two when I graduated. And they helped me to this day. Anytime I need somebody to talk to, or if I'm in town. Now I'm back in New York more often than I am in LA. But when I would come back, to New York, I was always invited to a place to stay. They invited me to all the family gatherings, and I'm considered family, and I consider them family. But it's one of those things where I look past the politics. Nobody really, they didn't share. Oh, you got to vote for Trump. It wasn't like that. It was just like you vote for who you want, and we leave it at that. And I think we need to get to a point where people need to stop labeling each other. Oh, you're this, you're that. If you support this, you're that. Everybody's going to like different things. Everybody's going to vote for different people. Everybody's going to be interested in, whatever they want. As long as you're not trying, I think this is the issue. People are trying to enforce or impose their beliefs on other people. If we stop doing that, we could probably have a conversation about anything, but everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to, you got to see it my way. I'm a big believer. If you don't like what I do, if you don't like my podcast, you don't like how I am, you are more than welcome to not associate with me. I don't take nothing against that, right? But like you said, when you start calling people's jobs and all this stuff, it's just like, what are we doing here?
Well, I mean, if you know me, I'm a pretty conservative guy, and we get labeled all these things without anybody even coming to us and asking. Okay, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but my oldest son is gay, and he had a black boyfriend, and I mean, mind you, they're already out of high school, they're adults, and they wanted to live together, but they didn't have a place to stay. Well, okay, you can come live with us. They lived in my house, and I treated him like all the rest of my kids. I fussed at him when he needed to pick up his messes, just like I do my own children. There wasn't even the thought of any anything having to do with the color of his skin or anything like that. And why should there be? Oh, of course I'm going to notice you're black. It's not. It's it's right there,
Right.
But that doesn't mean anything. He respected me. He was very respectful to me. I was very respectful to him. And that's the way the world needs to be. We need to stop trying to find reasons to hate each other and find reasons to like each other. I tell people all the time, I am far from prejudiced. Some of my best friends are Houston Texans fans. So, seriously though, stop trying to find things to divide us. We need to find common ground. That's the only way we're going to solve any of this stuff. What are we teaching our kids? What's the next gen? The kids are looking at us and what we do. And if we're going to be hateful and spiteful, then there's a pretty good chance they're going to end up the same way. Now, it doesn't have, it's not always that way. There's always exceptions, but kids are going to, I mean, their brains are moldable. That's why I taught my kids to respect people, and you like people because of their character. And I'm not just trying to say that as a cliche. That's honestly, we didn't call people by derogative names in our household. I don't believe in that. And I didn't want people to judge my children because of their sexuality.
Right.
But until we get it in our heads that we need to start looking for common ground, we're never going to change this mess. And you're not going to fix hate by more hate.
Absolutely. You know, just to wrap it up, a lot of people know me from some of the episodes I've done. Big YouTube channel Jubilee. I'm sure many people who follow this podcast know about it. But a lot of videos I've done with them gets millions of views, and part of the reason that is it's called Middle Ground. It's called Spectrum. They have different series, but most of the ones I've done is called Middle Ground, and it's basically taking two people from different sides of an argument sitting down and having conversations, right? And we
Exactly.
may not all walk away buddies, let's go grab something to eat, but we sit down and have a conversation. We could disagree, we could agree to disagree, or we can both say, "Oh, okay, I see what you're saying." And I think that's the key. And I think that's why, like Jubilee, for instance, but I'm a big fan of them. Is their content? Yeah, they might have a little agenda in some things, but the videos are meant for people to say, "Hey, sit down, have a conversation." Whether you're Republican, Democrat, you
Mm-hmm.
could see eye to eye, and even if you don't, we could just, "Hey, I wish you nothing but the best. I'm gonna go exit stage left, and you could go stage right, and we could be all right." And I think that's the key to everything. You don't have to, if you don't like somebody, just move on. You don't have to, start getting people's personal lives and businesses involved. Let's have a conversation. And if we don't agree, let's just part ways. I'll see you later. Have a good one, and let's call it a day, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was fantastic having you on. Like I said, we I was on your podcast, so for people, in order for them to check out our episode and any other episode, like I said, you've had many celebrities on, so I'm sure some people are going to want to listen to it. Where people can find you, find your podcast and everything.
Well, of course, we're on YouTube, and that it's going to be under the Vibes broadcast. We're also on Buzzsprout. Now, Buzzsprout is kind of a launching spot. It sends it to Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, just about anywhere you can listen to it. We're also on Odyssey and Rumble. And like I say, I am a conservative guy, but I don't try to say, hey, vote my way on my show. I have people on there that don't have the same political views as I do. I try to steer away from it. Now, we do have a few episodes that will be focused on stuff like that. I do put a warning in front of it, but for the most part, you get on there and it doesn't have anything to do with politics and all that. It's trying to bring us together, trying to help one another, trying to bring some positivity, inspiration. You'll find paranormal stuff on there, and I just invite you to at least give it a try. Tell me what you think, and if you like it, please hit that subscribe button. Help me out here. Like it, share it, and watch as much content as you can because Papa needs a new computer.
Absolutely. And on that note, if let's not be greedy, selfish here. Let's help him out. Let's help me out. And if anybody got $5,000, I can use it too. So.
Mm-hmm. Amen to
But
that.
oh, exactly. I think we all could use the extra $5,000. Let's be real here. um, but like I said, it may not be Norman Bates, but Kyle Yates, thank you for coming on. It was a great conversation. I'm sure a lot of people took a amazing perspective from you. Your journey bouncing back from your health scares and even living with it, and how you've bounced back from it, and continue to move forward with life. And those are the stories I want people to hear. It's the stories of people who have a backstory that many other people are suffering from or may relate to, and need guidance or need help and need somebody who's in that position to give them advice, to help them out. And I think that is the most powerful thing that I can offer. Although, like I said, if anybody got $5,000, I'll take it. But thank you, Kyle. Thank you for coming on. I'm sure you'll be back on, and we're gonna have more conversations. And like I always say, a helping hand is a better hand. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.